Hi everybody, I hope you're having a good weekend so far. So in this video I'm just going to be talking about the central idea in this week's reading and how it connects to previous authors, articles or lessons that we've learned in this class. So in this week in reading Proctor, Stockdale and watching the video, I think they all told, you know, they all inform the readers about the untold realities of the lived experiences of civilians in both imperial nations and colonies, and all materials reveal how civilians demands for not just a better governance, but a fight for civil liberties in an autocratic system where like the state holds more power over individual ideas or beliefs, and in this way it leads to revolution, and that will require violence to solve differences. As Proctor states in his book, he says that war weariness and economic distress helped create an environment in which violence appeared to be the answer to a whole host of woes, while militarization of society and prevalent war rhetoric endangered violence as a means to solve all sorts of problems. I remember watching in the video where Sergeant Shikogov in Petrograd will say that it's better for him to die with honor than obey the commands and shoot into the crowds. Our father, brothers, mothers, and sisters are begging for bread. Are we going to kill them? So this shows how he had arts, he had empathy for civilian lives. He doesn't want them to be dead, but because just they're begging for bread. And also like the totalitarian wife that also incited anger by telling her husband that they're just hoodlums, and he should take action and all those things. So to solidify this point, also in Strachan, he wrote that the idea is tied to a strategy of nationalistic ideal used to mobilize and control both colonial subjects and the masses, and I'll talk about that briefly, in my next phase, which is going to talk about how this idea is connected to past lessons. And one past lesson connected to was the empire, the empire war, and the major thing was like identity politics, nationalistic ideal tied as a major strategy. As Proctor also wrote, he says that national or colonial allegiance, racial and sexual identity, personal loyalty, all these concepts were tested as millions of civilians were mobilized to serve the needs of the state. He says that all these differences are enough to lead to disagreement over interpretation of war, sacrifice, and patriotism that may spark tension and violence. And definitely one way that I knew that it may spark violence is in the case of the African American struggles in the World War. And reading the textbook, Len Smith's textbook, I saw how Green Experiences tells us how violence can be used to reconstruct manhood and citizenship rights for African Americans. So like on page 44, Len Smith states that Houston stood out because of who the rioters were. The soldiers of 24 Infantry held themselves up as ideal of African American manhood, masterful, courageous, and undeniably tied to the nation. By retaliating against the abuses heaped on them by white Houstonians, the soldiers saw themselves and others saw them as using manhood to claim their citizenship. Lamentable as other racial activists found the killing in Houston, they saw the soldiers' action as part of an ongoing war at home against Jim Crow. So also black women especially view the Houston riots as a vindication of their men's honor and of their own, doubly bound by a racial system that elevated man over woman as well as white over black. African American women understood events like in Houston as attacks first on female bodies and securities, For those women pushing at the confines, meaningful expression of Black manhood, had to incorporate a mindfulness of women's trials and content. So, you know, just in the previous explanation that says that, you know, this has become more of an human corporation than national absolutism. So it is more fighting for, you know, equal rights, civil liberties, even for African American. And I think that, I know, perfectly ties into Len Smith's book on African American in the World War I, how violence can be used to reconstruct their identities and can be used to fight for civil liberties, to, you know, claim their citizenship rights. Thank you, and have a great week ahead.